Welcome back, children. We are moving on to yet another session, that is Consumer Equilibrium Theory by JR HICKS. Now, JR HICKS has used the concept of ordinal utility analysis to explain his theory, and he has explained his theory on the basis of indifference curve approach. Now, let us see the theory of consumer equilibrium propounded by JR HICKS. The concept of indifference curve. I told you JR HICKS has explained his consumer equilibrium theory with the concept of indifference curve analysis. What is this indifference curve analysis, or what is indifference curve? An indifference curve is a curve which shows the combination of two commodities. Two commodities here are X and Y, which yields the same level of satisfaction. Here the consumer is using two commodities X and Y. This gives the same level of satisfaction to the consumer. He has explained his theory on the basis of ordinal utility, which means utility which can be ranked. I told you if 12 baskets are kept with pineapple, orange, mango, etc., the consumer will rank his preference. So, on the basis of the preference ranked, consumer is getting satisfaction. So, here JR HICKS has used the concept of ordinal utility. So, indifference curve is a curve which shows the combinations of two goods which gives the same level of satisfaction to the consumer. He is using two commodities X and Y. Both the commodities yields the same level of satisfaction to the consumer. Indifference curve. Now, indifference schedule shows a tabular representation of indifference curve. To know about indifference curve, we need to know what is an indifference schedule, because whenever you draw a graph, for example bar diagram or any other graph that you draw, all the graphs will be based on a table. Looking the values from the table, we will be depicting it in the graph. Likewise, an indifference curve can be drawn with the help of an indifference schedule. What is an indifference schedule? Indifference schedule is a table which shows the combinations of two commodities which gives the same level of satisfaction. So, how will you write indifference schedule? How will you define indifference schedule? Indifference schedule is a table. Instead of curve, you can just write it as table, which shows the combinations of two commodities X and Y which gives the same level of satisfaction. So, indifference schedule is a table which shows the combinations of two commodities which gives the same level of satisfaction. The curve which we draw on the basis of that schedule or table is known as indifference curve. So, we can define indifference curve as a curve which shows the combinations of two commodities X and Y which gives the same level of satisfaction. Now, let us see the table. The two combinations of two goods X and Y. Different combinations we can find A, B, C and D. Now, in the first combination you can find good X and good Y. Good X is 1 unit and good Y is 8 units. Next combination you can find good X as 2 units, good Y as 4 units. Next combination you can find good X as 3 units, good Y as 2 units. Next combination good X as 4 units and good Y as 1 unit. Now you can find here good X as 1 unit and good Y as 8 unit with the first combination. Now in the second combination, what has happened? In the second combination B, good X is 2 and good Y is 4. In order to increase good X from 1 to 2, good Y is sacrificed from 8 to 4. In the third combination you can find In order to increase x from 2 to 3, y is decreased from 4 to 2. Again, in the next combination D, you can find in order to increase x from 3 to 4, y is decreased from 2 to 1. So, there is a sacrifice which is happening for y in order to increase x. So, these are the different combinations of two commodities which gives the same level of satisfaction to the consumer. Consumer is okay with any kind of combinations over here. This is the basic assumption on which the theory is based on. Now you can see the next heading, MRS. What is MRS? Marginal rate of substitution. MRS is marginal rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitution. What is this marginal rate of substitution? The rate at which one commodity is sacrificed for one more unit of another commodity. So, what is marginal rate of substitution? The rate at which one commodity is sacrificed. Here, which commodity is sacrificed? Y is sacrificed to get one more unit of another commodity, which is the gaining commodity here. X commodity is the gaining commodity. So, the formula to find out MRS is equal to delta Y by delta X. Now, how will you find out MRS? We can find out MRS. From the second unit only we will be able to find out MRS, because before the first combination there is only 0 unit consumed. Therefore, we do not have a value for that. Therefore, your MRS starts with the second combination B. Now, what is the sacrificing rate of Y? What is the difference between 8 and 4? Difference between 8 and 4 is 4. 4Y is 2. How much is gained for X? 1. Difference between 2 and 1 is 1. So, 4Y is to 1X. Next combination is, what is the, again it is 4Y is to 1X. So, this is the MRS is equal to delta Y by delta X, which shows the, there is a mistake over here. 2y is to 1x and 1y is to 1x. Okay, now it is clear. Now, again you can find good y is sacrificed for 2 and good x is gained for 1. Therefore, it is 2y is to 1x. Now, the next one is 1 is sacrificed for y and 1 is gained for x. Therefore, it is 1y is to 1x. So, these are the different combinations. See, so first one is 4y is to 1x, because rate of sacrifice is 8 to 4. Difference is 4y is to, gaining is 1x. Again, rate of sacrifice is 2y is to 1x, because from 4 sacrifice rate is 2. So, 2y is to 1x. Again, good y sacrificed by 1 unit, therefore 1y is to 1x, because 1 is gained for x. So, this is MRS, the rate of sacrifice of one commodity in order to gain more of the other commodity. Now, what is the observation from the table? Point number 1, if the quantity of one commodity is increased, the quantity of other good consumed must be decreased. Yes, here the quantity of y has decreased in order to increase the quantity of x. Point number 2, as the quantity of one good goes on increasing, the quantity of other good not only decreases but decreases at a decreasing rate. That is known as diminishing marginal rate of substitution, and that happens due to law of diminishing marginal utility. Once again I will repeat, as the quantity of one good goes on increasing, which quantity is going on increasing here? X is going on increasing here from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Again come back. As the quantity of one good goes on increasing, the quantity of other good not only decreases, Yes, the quantity of other goods should decrease, isn't it? From 8 to 4, 4 to 2, 2 to 1. This not only decreases, but decreases only at a decreasing rate, isn't it? From 8 to 4, again from 4 to 2 only it is decreasing, again from 2 to 1 only it is decreasing. So you can see the decreasing rate of y is becoming lesser for x. For x, we can write like this, for x, y is decreasing. Definitely for x, y is decreasing from 8 to 4, 4 to 2, 2 to 1. But this decreasing rate is decreasing rate of y is less. So what do we call for this? For x, y is decreasing, y is sacrificing. That is known as marginal rate of substitution. Once again I am telling, y is decreasing from 8 to 4, 4 to 2, 2 to 1 for gaining of x. That rate of sacrifice of y is known as marginal rate of substitution. But we can find that the rate of sacrifice of y is becoming lesser. Initially it was 8, then it became 4, then it became 2, then it became 1. So here the sacrificing rate is less. That less sacrificing rate is known by the name diminishing marginal rate of substitution, DMRS. That is what is written here. As the quantity of one good goes on increasing, x, the quantity of other good not only decreases, y is decreasing at a decreasing rate from 8 to 4, 4 to 2, 2 to 1. This is DMRS, diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitution means y is sacrificing for getting x, but the sacrificing rate of y is going on decreasing at each and every stage. That is known as DMRS. This DMRS is due to law of diminishing marginal utility. So here JR Hicks has applied, like Alfred Marshall, he has applied the law of diminishing marginal utility. Why is DMRS due to diminishing marginal utility? So here you can find the sacrificing rate of y is decreasing from 8 to 4, 4 to 2, 2 to 1. Why it is like that? If y is sacrificed for getting more of x, it means that people are buying more, people have started to buy more of x by sacrificing the y. And if more and more x is going to be purchased, law of diminishing marginal utility will work there. Law of diminishing marginal utility. And moreover, this y as a sacrificing rate cannot be brought back to 0. That means 0 unit of y is consumed and more of x is consumed. That is not a realistic consumption. That is not a realistic situation. Here the consumer is consuming both the commodities. So if y is going on sacrificing, it means what? Y becomes 0. That is not a realistic situation. Consumer is consuming both the commodities. So that is why DMRS means diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Consumer is sacrificing y for x. That is known as marginal rate of substitution. But if sacrificing rate of y is becoming less and less, that means decreasing or diminishing marginal rate of substitution. This diminishing marginal rate of substitution is caused due to the application of law of diminishing marginal utility. Diminishing marginal rate of substitution, the sacrificing rate of y is decreasing. Why sacrificing rate of y is decreasing? Because when x is consumed more and more, law of diminishing marginal utility will work there. After some time, the consumer will consume only less of x. And more than that, the consumer cannot sacrifice more and more of y. If more and more of y is sacrificed, what will happen? Y will become 0. This is not a realistic situation. That is why the sacrificing rate of y is becoming less. If more and more y is sacrificed, what will happen? Y will become 0. It is not a realistic situation. That is diminishing marginal rate of substitution. Therefore, diminishing marginal rate of substitution is indirectly due to the law of diminishing marginal utility. That is the observation from the table. So, two observations that you have learned from the table is marginal rate of substitution, that is rate of y sacrificed for x, for gaining x. So, y is a sacrificing unit, x is the gaining unit. Now, second one is when one unit is going on increasing, other unit has to decrease, but the sacrificing unit is decreasing only at a lesser rate after some time. That is known as diminishing marginal rate of substitution, and that diminishing marginal rate of substitution is due to the application of law of diminishing marginal utility. That means x cannot increase a lot, and at the same time y cannot sacrifice more. Why? If y is sacrificed more and more, y will become 0. This is an unrealistic situation. Therefore, sacrificing rate of y should become less after some time. That is why from 8 it has decreased to 4, from 4 it is sacrificed to 2, from 2 it is sacrificed to 1. Now, next is, these are the two observations of the table. Now, the concept of MRS. What is the concept of MRS? It is the rate at which the consumer is willing to sacrifice one good, here which good, y, in order to obtain more of the other good, which is more of the other good, x. Therefore, MRS is equal to change in the quantity of the good willing to sacrifice, that is delta y, divided by change in the quantity of good willing to gain, that is delta x. Delta y by delta x. Now, the table. Now, the table which I have given before is the one which I have repeated here. Combinations are A, B, C, D. MRS is 4y is to 1x, 2y is to 1x, and 1y is to 1x. Based on that schedule, this is indifference schedule. Indifference schedule. Based on this schedule, I have drawn the indifference curve. I have drawn the indifference curve. This is the indifference curve. Here, good x is marked on the x-axis, good y is marked on the y-axis. Now, let us give the values as 1 to 7 on the x-axis and 1 to 8 on the y-axis. Now, what is the first combination? 1 and 8. 1 is in the x-axis and 8 on the y-axis will give you this box. Again, 2 and 4. 2 and 4. Next is 3 and 2. 3 and 2. And the last one is 4 and 1. Now, these are the different combinations A, B, C and D. I have created the boxes for the explanation. Now, after that we can join these end points. If you join these end points and if you draw a curve, you will get the indifference curve. This is the indifference curve. This is the indifference curve. Now, from this we can find out the slope of each boxes. How will you find out the slope of each box? Let us first find out the first box, 1 and 8. This is 1 and 8, isn't it? 1 and 8. Now, the first box is this. Here you can find the slope is equal to AE by EB, which is AE. This is AE by EB. This is supposed to be AE and EB. That AE and EB is 4 by 1. That is 8 to 4, isn't it? 8 to 4 and 1 to 2. 8 to 4 and 1 to 2. 8 to 4 and from 1 to 2. 8 to 4 and 1 to 2. That is 4 divided by 1 is equal to 4. Next is BF by FC. BF is this box and FC is this one. Now that is 2 divided by 1. That is 4 to 2 is 2. 2 to 3 is 1. That is 4 to 2. From 4, 4 to 2 and 2 to 3. 2 to 3. That is BF by FC. This 2 by 1 is equal to 2. Next is CG by GD. CG by GD. That is 1 by 1. 2 to 1, 3 to 4. From 2 to 1, 3 to 4. That is CG by GD. It is 1 by 1 is equal to 1. This is the slope of the indifference curve. Here you can find one commodity is sacrificed. Which commodity is sacrificed? Y is sacrificed from 8 to 4 and X is gained from 1 to 2. That is why 4 by 1. Therefore, we can write that the slope of indifference curve. So here you can write the slope of indifference curve is equal to MRS. So MRS is thus the slope of indifference curve, because one commodity is sacrificed to get more of next commodity. 4 by 1 is equal to 4. So here one commodity is sacrificed to get more of the other commodity. That is the difference given here, AE by EB. So this is the slope of indifference curve. So as one commodity is sacrificed from 8 to 4 to get 1 to 2, sacrificed from 8 to 4 to get 1 to 2, this slope is the MRS, because MRS means the rate of substitution or sacrifice of one commodity to gain more of the other commodity. So remember, slope of indifference curve is MRS. So I have drawn the indifference curve based on the indifference schedule, and we have found the slope of indifference curve is MRS, marginal rate of substitution. Concept of indifference map. What is indifference map? A family of indifference curve is known as indifference map. A family of indifference curve is known as indifference map. So next concept is indifference map. If you draw indifference curves one by one, that is known as indifference map. Normally we draw the indifference curve as like this, isn't it? If you draw more and more indifference curves, a family of indifference curves is known as indifference map. Here two indifference curves are there, one's IC1 and IC2. If I draw one more, this will be IC3. So a family of indifference curves is known as indifference map. Now you know that indifference curve 1, IC1 is a combination which gives maximum satisfaction for a consumer. Again the next indifference curve is given IC2. Now always a consumer will wish to move to a higher indifference curve. Why? Because in a higher indifference curve he will get more utility, because in the higher indifference curve, a greater combination of both the goods will be available. For example, in the first indifference curve, OX1 of X commodity and OY1 of Y commodity is available. But in the second indifference curve, OX2 of X commodity and OY2 of Y commodity is available. In the next indifference curve, OX3 of X commodity and OY3 of Y commodity is available. Therefore, a consumer will normally wish to move to a higher indifference curve IC3, because he is getting more combinations of X and Y. So, utility is an increasing function of consumption. You can find utility is an increasing function of consumption. His utility increases. He can capture the highest basket when he moves to a higher indifference curve. OX3 and OY3 is better than OX1 and OY1. Therefore, a consumer will always wish to move to a higher indifference curve IC3. So, utility as an increasing function of consumption, that is known as monotonic preference. That concept is known as monotonic preference. That concept is known as monotonic preference. Okay, so utility as an increasing function of the consumption is known as monotonic preference. So here in this session we discussed about indifference schedule, indifference curve and indifference map. Why we have discussed the indifference schedule, curve and indifference map? Because to explain the consumer equilibrium theory by JR HICKS, we need to understand the basic concept of his theory. His basic concepts of consumer equilibrium theory start with indifference curve, because on the basis of indifference curve and another concept known as budget line, he has explained his consumer equilibrium theory. So we have first finished with the indifference curve. What is indifference curve? It is the combination of two commodities which gives the same level of satisfaction to the consumer. To draw an indifference curve, we need the help of an indifference schedule. Indifference schedule shows the combinations of two goods which gives the same level of satisfaction to the consumers. Here there are four combinations A, B, C, D. There you can find, in order to increase the X, Y has sacrificed. That sacrificing rate of Y for X is known as MRS. But after some time you can find the sacrificing rate of X, Y is going on decreasing. That is known as DMRS. That sacrificing rate of Y must decrease, otherwise what will happen? Y will go on sacrificing and it becomes 0. That is an unrealistic situation. And secondly, the law of diminishing marginal utility works there, because when Y's sacrificing rate is going on decreasing, when Y is sacrificing, it means more of X is consumed. When more of X is consumed, law of diminishing marginal utility will work. So obviously the sacrificing rate of Y will decrease. Now then we learned about the formula of MRS. Formula of MRS is delta Y by delta X, amount of X, Y commodity willing to sacrifice by amount of X commodity gained. Then comes the indifference curve, graphical representation of indifference schedule. There we learned how to find out the slope. The first box, which consists of A, E and EB, which shows sacrificing rate of Y from 8 to 4 and gaining rate of X from 1 to 2. So therefore we can say the slope of indifference curve is MRS, because MRS shows the sacrificing rate of Y to gain X. So slope of IC is MRS. Then we learned about the concept of indifference map. A family of indifference curve is known as indifference map. A consumer will always wish to move to a higher indifference curve, because there he gets maximum basket of Y and X commodity. Utility is thus an increasing function of consumption, that is known as monotonic preferences. Thank you.